Welcome to Reflecting Light. This podcast is about filling the world with light by exploring myth, ancient texts, scripture, great works of world literature, and the works of artists, past and present, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And now, here is your host, Mandy Green. Hello, welcome to Reflecting Light. I'm your host, Mandy Green. I wanted to jump on before I queue up our podcast for today. It's with Libertas International. It's an organization created to help with the rescue and the aftercare of girls caught in human trafficking. And it's a deep, intense, needed conversation, one worthy of all of our attention. Even though it is a harder topic, I wanted to give you a little bit of a forewarning and also just ask you to stay with us through the end as we see how beauty can be made from ashes through our Lord Jesus Christ. So with that, we'll engage in the podcast for this week. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reflecting Light. It's been an interesting season, and I appreciate you hanging with me. In our post-Easter contemplation and our post-Easter podcast, the opportunity came up for me to interview two people who are associated with Libertas International and with victims of human trafficking. And I thought, what better way to talk about Easter than freeing the captives and shining light in dark places? And these are pretty dark places to shine light in. So we have today Miss Wyoming, Adelaide Roberts, this is her platform, what she'd like to make a difference with in the world, and Tyler Schwab, are you the head of Libertas International?
Yeah, I'm the least important, but I guess on paper, the president and founder.
The president and founder of Libertas International, who is the boots on the ground, actually rescuing kids, getting them care afterward. And I know I don't just speak for myself. We are just grateful. And I know this comes at great personal cost, Tyler. There's no way this work doesn't cost you. So thank you both for the work you're doing. Adelaide, why don't we start with you, Miss Wyoming 2020. Tell me what got you started with this, and then we'll really dive in with you, Tyler, and ask you about how you got started and some of the beautiful and hard things you've seen and where we want to take this. So, lady, take it away.
Thanks, Mandy. Yeah, you got me there. I got emotional for a second. Tyler has done so much for so many people around the world. And so I'm so excited to hear his side of it too, because the Lord literally has truly guided, I know myself, to how I can help in a certain capacity. And so, like Mandy said, I'm Miss Wyoming for America Strong 2023. And when this opportunity came, I had just recently returned home from an 18-month mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And on that mission, I will never forget, and I still have nightmares about it to this day. There was a time where we were driving on the street, and there's this kid with his hood up. He had a Starbucks drink. It was completely full. There's a man, and he was holding him around like the shoulders and like white knuckle holding on to him. And you just instantly knew. And I was with another missionary, and I was like, we have to turn around right now. Like, stop the car. I'm getting out. And we turned around, we came back, and that boy was gone. And I hated that feeling. I was like, I never want to feel that way ever again. Like, I will never feel helpless like this. And on my mission, I saw a couple other scenarios with some of my closer friends there. And so I knew when I came home that there was something I had to do. And so the opportunity to go for Miss Wyoming for America Strong came. And at first, my family and I joked about it, like, "Oh, we should do that. That'd be hilarious." And then the Lord, He is tricky. He has this plan, and He'll prepare you for it a lot longer than you think. And so everything just worked out so perfectly that I could stand as Miss Wyoming for America Strong. And then that's my way to get in and not be helpless anymore. I can use that title to help find sponsors for individuals that have been trafficked and help with their aftercare. Or even if it doesn't go that far, I can still spread the awareness and share my experiences and why I am involved, and so that I can help people not feel helpless like I did. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I know, I think that is true. What do you, and maybe both of you can speak to this, like, but what are some things you can look for? I know I travel a lot and the airports always say like there's things posted, but what are maybe some clues? Like, how did you know that lady? And Tyler, what are some things that people can just be maybe more aware of? And then we'll jump in, Tyler, with your why and what got you started on this.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that people can look for is, there's stuff like if they have some kind of brand on them, somebody's name, like a tattoo. A lot of times traffickers will brand their victims. We just had a case actually that just came to trial and sentencing out in Chicago with an American guy who would tattoo his name on every victim that he would exploit. And so we're in the process of removing those tattoos as we speak, because these girls obviously don't want to live with his name on their bodies forever.
Oh gosh.
And then there's things uh like obscene amounts of cash. Like if kids have an obscene amount of cash, if they're with an adult and the adult is talking for them all the time, that's a big red flag. Traffickers like to exert control over the victims. They like to speak for their victims. And even asking, if you have, following your gut instinct and you ask a victim of human trafficking, do you want cheese on your hamburger? Do you want ice in your drink? And to see how they react and see if the parent or the adult with them answers for them or doesn't answer for them, or if they're acting nervous given the chance to choose something. Those could be signs that someone's being exploited. And I think what Lady said, like in her story, was just so important too. Just like that gut feeling too of I'm a big believer in your gut. If you see things, you gut, spirit, call it whatever you want, but that feeling, which is something's not right, and then acting on it. I think based on my conversations with different law enforcement, is that they would rather get 10 fake leads and find the solid lead versus not getting the lead that actually leads to the rescue of somebody.
Yes, that's so true. Well, thank you. Tyler, what led you on this course and where is it taking you? What are some of the things that's come up, and what do you wish people would know? I mean, I'm asking all my questions at once. Let's start with what
Yeah.
started you on this course and go from there.
Yeah, I think what started me on this course is probably like Lady said, like probably an LDS mission. Those missions are just so transformative in the lives of young kids, and me especially. Like I wasn't near as nice as Lady. I was kind of an arrogant kid. I thought the world kind of revolved around me. I was an athlete. I thought like I was really important, and I wasn't nearly as important as I thought I was. But man, did I think I was important. And you just get exposed to what the real world looks like. And for me, it was what life looks like in the developing world for women and children, and seeing just the violence, the poverty, and then how people with influence can exploit those that don't have influence. And it changed my life, like seeing that dynamic and seeing a 14-year-old girl who has to perform sexually on a 72-year-old European man because a European man happens to have more zeros in his bank account. Like that just didn't seem right. And it's happening, 10 million times over across the world. And so this journey, like it's been a crazy journey. Like it's taken me all over the world. I've been to, I think 28, 29 countries. I've been in courtrooms against porn companies. I've been in courtrooms against traffickers. I've been threatened a couple of different times. There's times where I've seen some great successes. I've seen some great losses. But what keeps me in it is just there's two things that probably keep me in it is just the survivors themselves. Like, Lady was mentioning of her getting involved and her traveling here in a little bit to meet some of the survivors. You just meet them and they're just so brave. They're just so strong. They're just so amazing that they really are the most special thing about me, and they just deserve my full effort. And then like just going back to the scriptures is the trafficking, the exploitation of women and children. Like when you think of the creation, and God, spent a whole week creating the world, creating us, doing all these different things, and at the very end, when he finally decided that he was done, he got it right, is when he created Eve. That was his. He was like, okay, this is the pinnacle of my creation. This is what it's all about. Now I'm done. And trafficking, what that does is it takes that and just flips it on its head, where women are seen as a sexual object. They're seen as something to enslave, to abuse, to exploit. And so it's almost like I feel like it's a duty to God to fulfill his creation in a sense of what it's written about, like in the book of Genesis, because he created women to be free. He created women to thrive, to heal, to do all these different amazing things. And trafficking takes all that away. And so it's doing my part to hopefully take care of God's greatest creation, which I believe is women.
Wow. Well, thank you, Tyler. And I know that did not come easily. So thank you. Yeah, these very vulnerable populations. I think it's so important to remember that Jesus is always thinking of the least of these. And I appreciate how much you both advocate for those who are silenced. I can't even imagine. I mean, and I'm like a white woman in a first world country. I can't imagine. And I come up against sexism, and I come up against like, that the whole plan is get rid of women and or make them feel so awful and unempowered about themselves that they fail to see their own value. So thank you in doing that. Where did it actually, like, when did you begin Libertas International? What do you do with Libertas? 28 countries, that's staggering. What are some of the places you've been? And whatever you feel is important, like youngest to oldest, anything like that. Give us, like, if you could paint a picture for us. Probably has a lot of dark hues in it, but I feel we need to be honest about it, right? Like just pretending it's not there is not going to help anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I add something real fast? Sorry.
You bet.
I There's something that I think of all the time because I remember going to the theater with my parents when I was like 13 or 14, and we watched this documentary on like human trafficking. And I remember that like icky feeling that you get, right? It's uncomfortable. These things are not comfortable to talk about these men coming and abusing a child sexually and from all different age ranges. But I remember there's a phrase and it just says, you just have to be brave. Just be brave with me for a second. And so we're just asking you to be brave for a second. And that's what I just think of. Second by second. Just be brave. Anyhow, that's my interjection.
No, I think that's perfect, Adelaide. Thank you for sharing that. All right, everybody, be brave while Tyler is even braver actually doing this on the ground.
Yeah, I can I guess the story of Libertas, like, so my journey is like fighting human trafficking. Like it's taken me to probably the weirdest place I've ever been is probably Kiev, Ukraine. That usually like raises some eyebrows of like Kiev. But I went to Kiev pre-war. So the Kiev that I went to was really like a really nice like a suburb of like New York City. Really nice. And not the same Kiev that exists today. I've been to Joburg, South Africa a couple of times, Mexico City, Guatemala City, Bogota, Colombia, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Toronto, Amsterdam for one trip that didn't end up going that well. But so it's got me to see the world, and it's been good. But the place I think that I fell in love with the most was Colombia. And it has every place has its own little distinct form of trafficking. Like a lot of the stuff we had in Ukraine was Russian run, Russian brothels, Russian webcam studios. In Guatemala, it was very much gang based. In Mexico, very much narco traffickers. And here in the States, a lot of it is familial, of families who have trafficked their kids for generations.
Wow.
including, some cases here in Utah of some really horrific satanic ritual abuse that's kind of come to the news over the legislature and stuff as they're looking to enact new laws. But the stuff that I found that was most disturbing to me, just because it's where I saw the biggest power dynamic, was when I discovered in Medellin, Colombia, that there were American men that were just American men. Like they lived normal lives here. They're not sex offenders. They're not on the registry. They're just like normal guys that would go down to Colombia, find the most vulnerable, exploit them, abuse them, film them, upload these videos to different porn sites, then come back home like it was nothing. Like over the last 4 years, there's been cases of a school teacher from Austin, Texas, a taxi driver from Florida, an ex-military officer from Florida, a crypto influencer from California, and then one of our most recent cases is a police officer from New York City who actually went down to Colombia and he abused a 19-month-old baby, filmed the whole thing, uploaded it, shared it with his friends. And so for me, like that was what I guess pissed me off the most, where I was
Yeah.
so upset that this was happening, and the people of Colombia are just such wonderful people I decided to really focus all of my efforts down there, as well as helping out like in other countries across the world. But Colombia is where I found my home. What we do down there is, first and foremost, we make sure that the survivor is taken care of. When a survivor is vulnerable enough to disclose what's happened to her, meeting those basic needs: food, water, shelter, medical, love and care, making sure that she's taken care of and that she feels safe with us to be able to continue on this legal process. Get her in a process of vocational training, some kind of tech school, get her on the path of education, help her to feel empowered with her studies, get her on the path to being a normal kid, and just work every aspect of like the human being to help heal that person after they've gone through this abuse. And then we invest a lot like on the justice side. We invest a lot in our partners at Homeland Security, the Colombian police, the US Embassy, because we've seen that justice is healing. And when a girl is vulnerable enough to share this horrific thing that's happened to her, we want to see these American guys put in handcuffs. We want to see them put in jail. We want to see them pay for what they've done. And luckily, Libertas International, I think our total number of traffickers we've helped remove from the street is around 47, and 13 of those have been American citizens. And it's a tough job. It's a hard work, but to see these American predators go down and pay for what they've done after thinking that because they're American and they're men, they can do whatever they want is so gratifying. And then seeing these survivors heal, to see them go to school, to even like there's one that was texting me this morning, and she's 15. And so she was telling us about how she won her football game on Friday and she's fighting with her boyfriend currently. And to me, that whole thing is just so beautiful because she's a normal kid now. She goes through normal things. She fights with boyfriend. She posts her feelings in a cryptic way on social media, and she won her soccer game. For me, that's a huge success because she's a normal 15-year-old kid. And so that's kind of that's our mission in a whole, is to support the survivors first and foremost, and then work with local authorities to make sure that these American predators pay for what they've done.
Thank you. Wow, that I think sometimes it seems like such a dark, ugly beast that it's like, oh, how can you recover from this? And yeah, healing is real. Healing can happen. And you outlined the process of how you do that. Like, what's maybe one of your favorite success stories, like that was really, really great about something that seemed so just bleak, and yet here's a person thriving again.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. Actually, the lady reminded me of the story when she brought up, being brave. Like, what does that look like? Why is that word so important? And I've always loved, like cinema and movies and stuff, and seeing people like act brave when being brave is not convenient. And last year, I think I witnessed just the strongest act of bravery I think I've ever seen in my life. So these two girls came with me to New York. I met these girls around 5 years ago. they were referred to me because there was an American guy that went down. He exploited them, and then he filmed the abuse and uploaded it to Pornhub and X videos. And he was making money off of these kids. They were kids, 15 and 14 years old, off of their rape. And he was making money off of it. The porn companies weren't fighting at all to get him taken down. And so the girls came to us and they needed their tattoos removed because he branded them. They wanted these videos removed, and they wanted to heal from what this guy had done. And so we began a very long process with them to get that started, to get those videos taken down, to get those tattoos removed, to figure out what they wanted to do, like with their vocational training, with their education. And one of them wanted to go to vet school. One wanted to go and open like a nail salon in her house. And so, and Lady will meet both these women next month, and we invested a lot in that so they could accomplish those dreams. And we had good times and bad times. Like the path of healing isn't like this. It's very much a curve, and it can have its ups and downs. And sometimes it feels like we are going backwards very quickly. But the survivors were so strong and so dedicated to their process that they saw it through. That they took care of themselves, and they worked with the justice system to get these guys arrested. And so one of the men, his name is Herbert Fletcher. You can look him up. He's a predator from New York City. It was his time to get sentenced to jail. He had been found guilty, and it was time for his sentencing. And the DOJ invited these two survivors up to New York. And so we invite them up. They got to see, the New York scene, the Times Square, the Central Park. They got to go to a Broadway play. They got to see Ground Zero, all these cool things. And which was great. It was great to see them so happy. And I had another person with me that decided to come with me on the trips. It was a group of 4 of us, 5 of us, me, my psychologist, this other person, and then these 2 survivors. And the day of the sentencing, we didn't anticipate like what would happen. The trafficker had paid his bail, so he was free until he had been sentenced to jail. He could walk around freely. There was no police officer. There was no handcuffs on him, so he could walk around the courtroom as freely as he'd like. He invited his whole family. His whole family was there, around 25, 30 people in the courtroom. And his defense attorneys were particularly nasty to the girls. The defense attorneys opening up sentencing, basically to the judge, started painting these women as prostitutes, as hookers, saying that they wanted this, that they tricked their client into abusing them, that he shouldn't even be in this chair, that they should be in jail for tricking this man into sex with them. And the girls, they had like this victim impact statement they were wanting to read, but hearing like how they were being talked about, they got pissed. Like they crumpled up the paper, they chucked it, and they're like, I don't want to speak my letter. I want to speak to this person directly. And at this point, they can say whatever they want because it's a federal hearing. And we were like, just don't go too crazy. Like, don't get us like thrown out of the courtroom or whatever. But it's on their space to say whatever they want. And so I watched these 2 women, and this guy, he ruined their childhood. He abused them in the most intimate ways. He published these intimate videos that he filmed secretly to the whole world. These videos were consumed by millions of people before they were finally taken down. And these women looked this guy in the face and essentially told him that he's a pedophile. Like, you are a pedophile. You belong in jail. You did this to me. You did this to me. Your lawyers are they're full of crap. Like, we weren't prostitutes. We worked in an ice cream store. You found us in an ice cream store. Like, that's where you first invited us to your house, where you put drugs in our drink, where all these things happened. You threatened us. Like, you guys, your lawyers, your family, like, we're not scared. Like, we're the most dangerous people in this courtroom. And for me, I was so impacted. I was just sitting back, and like, at this point, I can do nothing. I can just watch. And these women just giving it to this guy, just speaking truth into him and letting him know that they're not afraid of the lawyers, of the family, of the judge, and speaking their truth in a way that was so powerful. And I asked them after, I was like, are you guys not scared? And they're like, oh, we were terrified. But being brave isn't being without fear. It's doing the right thing despite your fear. And so I'd never seen it before, where these girls just spoke with so much power and confidence. And the judge was so impacted by that the recommended sentencing of this guy, he actually went over a couple years because he was so impacted by what these women had to say. And on top of the whole thing, unbeknownst to me, the person that was with me was also a survivor of sexual assault that hadn't reported yet. And
Wow.
her seeing these women, these survivors from Colombia that shared this story, that looked this guy in the face that ruined their childhood, and essentially telling him that enjoy prison, it gave her the confidence to then go and report what had happened to her once she got back home from New York. And for me, that's just so brave on so many different levels, to not only look at the man in the face that hurt you, but because you're so brave, inspire somebody who at this point was suffering in silence to then be brave enough to go and report what's happened to her as well.
Wow. That is a triumph. That's a triumph in every sense of the word. As we've been talking, I have been thinking that same thing. I know sometimes we always feel like it's out there, and yet it's here. And families are trafficking um, their own family members. And I feel really inspired to ask you guys, what do you do? Like, how can you gather the courage to, if you are a victim of abuse, if you are a victim of any of these things, like what are some ways you found to free yourself of this, to get the help that you need?
Well, go ahead, lady. You go first.
Okay, I just have two quick thoughts. Just going back on what Ty said, and I remember, um, if this, I'm pretty sure this is the same case I'm thinking of. Upstate New York, he was like self-proclaimed Nazi, right? There's a
Oh no,
dog.
that's not the same guy. Yeah,
Oh,
Nazi's a different
dang,
kid. But he's
not,
coming. He's coming.
but so I guess same New York. But I remember talking to Ty on the phone about a year ago, and he told me about this case they were working with. And he probably doesn't even remember this, but he was like, I'm a little nervous. Like, the judge that has been called to this hearing, he is known to go both ways. And the the courage still, that not knowing the outcome, or the bravery in still not knowing the outcome, but still just like facing it head on, I think that is truly what has inspired me through this whole process. And I know Ty has been a big inspiration to me for that, because you don't know what's going to happen, but it's way better to live with no regrets than to live with that regret. And so that was just something to add on. So if you are scared, like, of course you're going to be scared, but that's why God sent his son, Jesus Christ. He created all of this so that you will be okay. No matter what happens, he's going to make it okay, whether it's if it's in this life or the next.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement. Like that. Like the whole point of being brave is, you don't know the outcome. You don't know if it's gonna be okay. Honestly, like I'm a big superhero nerd, and like there's a scene in the Avengers Infinity War where Captain America throws on his shield against Thanos and his army, and at this point he doesn't know that those portals are gonna open up and every Avenger in the world is gonna come to his aid. At this point, he's just like, well, this is me being brave. May die here, but gotta put on my shield and keep going. And that's exactly what these girls did in New York. And it takes a special, like you mentioned, Mandy, like just a special type of bravery too. Of like, I mean, this case that I'm talking about in New York. I mean, the guy was an American stranger that came to Colombia and abused these two girls. It takes, I don't want to say even more bravery, but it takes a different kind of bravery to report when that's your own family. Like that
Yeah.
is so just like I have a
Your
case in
life's
Guatemala.
tied up in all of those other lives, you know?
Yeah, and there's such a loyalty between like mothers and daughters specifically. I had a case in Guatemala where the mother had put a hit out on this girl's head. She wanted her head on her desk for reporting her for trafficking her. And it came time for trial, and the survivor wouldn't go. She said, "I'm not going to put my mother in jail. Yeah, she tried to kill me. Yeah, she trafficked me for 4 years, but I'm not. I'm not going to do it. Like I won't. It's my mother." And like it's such a awful, like intimate thing. Like we get a lot of cases of parents who have trafficked their kids, mothers, fathers, uncles, cousins. And I think just like for the community out there, if you have someone that comes to you that says that they're abused, like for one is believe them. And that's the first thing you can do, is because they're going to get their story questioned 1,000 times throughout this legal process. and they need someone they can count on that's going to believe them despite some of the discrepancies that may come up in court or whatever. They're going to need someone that has their backs, and then once this process ends, like they're going to, especially reporting a family member, they're going to lose some family because some family is going to blame the survivor for opening her mouth and talking to the cops and not just like sucking it up and dealing with it. And so if someone comes to you, I'm speaking, from a survivor that I have here in Salt Lake who reported her mother for doing these things to her, and she was really little, and she needs someone who believed her, and she needs someone who, when her world came crashing down, even though she won her court case, that someone's there with her to help pick up the pieces.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. I mean, so much bravery, just remarkable, remarkable bravery from people who had so many things taken, because you're right. Like, even when you win, you're losing, right? You're still losing, but that foresight, that courage to do that so that other people aren't victimized, right? Those two brave girls, like, they stopped other girls from having to go through what they went through. And it's a nice way to, I mean, you just said you're victims in Salt Lake City. That this is not something that's isolated away from us, is it? But in an effort to shine light in dark places, um, tell us what you're both doing next month and what you're trying to help, the number of girls you're trying to help, the number of girls you're trying to sponsor, and how, as listeners, I think we can all do a much better job of not closing our eyes to this. So that was the first part of our conversation. And the second part is becoming more aware, being actively engaged in a good cause, right? Um, the Savior said it, in as much as ye have done it to the least of these. I can't think of anyone more the least of these than children and teenage girls. So to create an awareness in us, and third, to act on that awareness. If you feel so inspired, tell us what you're doing, what it involves, how many girls, what some of the needs are, and how we can be helpful instead of just saying, that's too bad. Like, how do we actually um, help the least of these, right? What's a concrete way? And I want to say, first of all, from my own point of view, I know both of these two very personally. I know a lot of times, sometimes we give money or time or invest in programs thinking we're making a difference, and maybe we feel like we aren't. But I'll personally vouch for these. I'll stand on this box, and I'm good with that. Um, I'm good with that. So tell us what you're up for.
Okay, thanks, Mandy. So right now, I am looking at a list. Last I checked, there was 93 survivors on this list. And each of these survivors, we are trying to get them sponsored so that they can continue growing after they have been rescued from these horrendous situations. And so we are trying to sponsor each one of these girls. We have ages from like 6 years old to 18 years old. And we're trying to get each girl a total of $275. And then they also have specific needs. So, for example, some of them are looking for school supplies, specifically notebooks and backpacks. Others are looking for makeup so they can start their makeup business, artistry work. And then others are looking for fabric so that they can start sewing and selling clothes. And then the younger ones are looking for diapers or formula. And so with Libertas, and as Miss Wyoming for America Strong, we're trying to get each of these individuals that have been rescued, each of these individuals sponsored so that they can continue their growth after they have escaped the situation.
Awesome. Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of these girls? So it's not just like a number. It's like these are lives. These are little kids in some cases.
Yeah, I'm really excited they're coming too. Addie, she's coming down with Katie and her family, and and they're going at a really interesting time in Columbia's history. Like there was a case that happened a few days ago of an American man from Ohio who escaped a hotel, and two girls were found in his apartment, and the city's enraged, and there's mass protests, and a lot of things are changing in the city, which is good because it needed to change, and Americans being held accountable. And in the midst of all this, this really, first off, it's cool they're coming down because the survivors are very aware that Libertas is a Wyoming-based organization. That's where our registration is. That's where we pay taxes. And so Wyoming is kind of like the dream for a lot of these survivors. They don't want to go to New York. They don't want to go to Miami. They want to go to California. They want to go to Wyoming. Wyoming's like this mythical land they all want to visit at some point. And so to have like Miss Wyoming come down, it's almost like royalty coming down, where they're like, "Oh, we get to meet Miss Wyoming." Like she lives in like this forest with the bears and whatever. And so it's very cool. A chance to sponsor, like Lady said, there's these sponsorship opportunities for these survivors. So we essentially get to bless them to where all of these girls in their path of healing, they will come across like specific needs. And this is a way where we can involve people that want to get anciently involved in a good cause to give, like you said, $275, and it impacts this life in this way, it impacts this life in that way. And then we're going to hold a little event together. We've rented out this nice little spot with this little cabin. They're going to be roughing it for a few days, so I hope that Addie and her family are okay with that. But it's got a pool, it's got a barbecue pit, and every day we're going to invite, because at Libertas International we have in the city of Medellin we have 87 survivors who call Libertas home. And so every day we're going to invite 11 girls to come with their family. We're going to put makeup on them. We're going to get their nails done, their eyelashes done. I guess that's a thing. The hair done, all these different things. And then Katie, Addie's mom, is going to take nice professional pictures of them for their resumes, for their school, for their social media, whatever they want these pictures for. And then they get to eat some barbecue. They get to go into the pool. They get to sleep in the hammock. They can do whatever they want. And so for us, it's a way to treat them with something like a very specific talent that Lady's mom has. It's a way for the nonprofit to give something to them without expecting, once again, anything in return. It's a free gift, which is so important for us, that we give these free gifts that have no strings attached. And it's a chance for Katie and Lady and this team that's coming to get to know, what Libertas does and what we're all about. And because, people can read social media, they can listen to the podcast, they can listen to all these different things. But I mean, you sit down with these survivors and they just change your life. Like we have this saying with our team is every one of them impacts your soul in a distinct way. And it's so true. Like, one of the survivors that I'm very close to, she's turning 18 next month. And so Lady will get to meet her. I met her when she was 13 years old. She was trafficked by an American guy named Michael Roberts. You can Google him. He's a school teacher from Austin, Texas. And he was specifically violent. He wanted one of these victims to feel as if he could kill them if he wanted to. So he would choke them a lot. He would put them on the floor, step on their heads. He would do all these very vile things. And when his arrest happened, they pulled this little girl out of his Airbnb, this 13-year-old little girl, and she had a police interview. And at this point, she had to go to a home for 6 weeks. And she told this police officer, "What am I going to do when I get out? What am I going to do? Like, I'm still poor. I still have to take care of my grandma. How are you?" I reported this American guy. What happens next? This police officer, he was a good friend of mine. He actually works for our nonprofit now, but at this time we were just colleagues. And he wrote down my phone number. He was like, "Here, take this phone number, memorize it, because supposedly this person helps girls who are victimized by foreign men." And so she has like this piece of paper, like this 307 number on this Wyoming area code that she then took into the aftercare home. She was hiding in her bra between her toes, under her armpit, because they do cavity searches for contraband and drugs and stuff. And she just kept this number until she had it memorized. And when she got out, she called me. She called me. She told me, what was going on, and and she wanted help, and began this process of healing with her, of going after this American guy that abused her in these horrific ways. And she's such a special kid, because she went through the whole process. They got the guy arrested. He's in jail. He's rotting in federal prison now. She took serious her healing. She's currently studying social work in college. She's 17 because she wants to one day work for Libertas International as a social worker. And she's a big time nerd, just like me. Like, she loves like TV shows, and she always, every couple of weeks, she watches one, and she gets very emotional because she has like these thoughts, and they come up. And so she called me a couple of weeks ago because she just finished this TV show called The Last of Us. And The Last of Us, if any of you guys have seen The Last of Us, it's about a pandemic. It's about this end of the world, essentially. And there's this girl who's around 15 that needs help, and she finds this old man to help her. This old man being this main character, and is Joel. He's like in his mid-50s or something, and he's the one that takes her in and protects her and helps her. And she got all emotional because she's connecting like her story and my story to Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us. And so she called me. She got all emotional, and she has this. She a couple of weeks ago, she found the 307 napkin or note that she wrote, that the cop wrote my number on. And so she had it framed for me. She had it framed for me. She could give it to me. I'm going to put it in my office. It's the note that saved her life, essentially, with this 307 area code. And her story is so beautiful, but it's one of 87. Like, it's 87 distinct stories just like that. Like the girls from New York, the baby that was rescued from the police officer. And so for me, like, and I love that these survivors meet new, safe adults as well. And they know that it's not just like, because these survivors, like, they give me too much credit. They're like, oh, you saved us, you did all these things, and it's not true. Like, it's not true, like what they say. I appreciate the thought, but it's them who save themselves when they decide to heal, when they decide to fight, when they decide to pursue justice. And I can't do this by myself. That's why people like Lady are so important, or like this podcast, man, is so important, because it spreads the word, and it brings awareness that we can't do it alone, that we actually need your help. And so for these survivors to meet more people that have supported them, that are being their voice in places like Miss Wyoming, for me, I can't wait. I can't wait to see them again. I can't wait to spoil them like during these days. I can't wait that members of my family, like Lady and Katie and all these people who have heard about these survivors for years, finally get to meet them, and to see that when people donate, it's really changing lives. And I cannot wait for May to come. And I'm just so glad that they're giving up a sense of their innocence and their time and their resources to come and serve on these people that I love so dearly.
Wow. I mean, those are such powerful words. Those are such powerful words. And you can tell your heart's in the right place. We are far more effective together than we are alone. And I can tell you, Tyler's been holding up the world with both arms. I mean, you can see he's pretty ripped and buff. He's been holding up the world on his own for a long time.
But he'll never admit it.
He doesn't need to. Like, there's plenty of us who can lend some strength and lend some help. And I think I'm just so grateful that you would get on and talk about this. And I'm trying to think of what $275 buys me, like a Costco run, if I'm lucky. I mean, one therapy session, maybe 1.5. But this is for, if I understand it right, it's a year. That's for a year, or what's, yeah, like that's, I mean, I'm just thinking for many of us, like that's not a huge sacrifice. And if it is a huge sacrifice, how beautiful that you can donate $5 or $8 or $15 intentionally, because I think it's more than the money. I think it's showing these 83, 93, 87, and 93 girls that, hey, you have people who love you. You have people who have never met you, but they believe in you. They believe in what you're doing, and they want to see you thrive, and they want to see you shine. And that's such an easy way to I mean, it's almost too easy. Our hands don't get dirty at all. We don't have to go in and do what you have to do, Tyler. But
Can I add to that, Mandy?
yeah, I was just gonna say, what are your thoughts, both of you?
Yeah, I think something that I personally have learned this year is that the devil, whatever you believe in, the adversary, it's all about isolation. As you become alone, as you feel alone, you're the only one that has ever felt these emotions or gone through this experience. That is how you get burnout, and that's when you give up. And so being able to help in this capacity in any form that you can, whether it's being informed of what's going on or being able to provide that Costco run money, it's it's a form of not being isolated anymore. It's joining together in a bigger purpose. And in the Libertas website, there is you can become a monthly donator, and so you can give like $5 a month, right? Goes along with if you do church donations, the same thing, right? And so you can do it every month. And also there's a newsletter that comes out. How often does that come out, Ty? Is it
Quarterly, every quarter, every 3 months.
okay? Yeah. And this quarter it'll talk about, hey, like a couple months ago it said, hey, we are raising money to get this brand of this guy's name off of one of our survivors. And just like, this is an update. This is what we're doing. We're currently in court right now in upstate New York. We're trying to figure out this situation. And so you can stay involved that way as well. And so there's so many different things that we can be involved in that when we say we didn't know, it's that's not an excuse anymore because there's so many opportunities for us to be involved, and it just takes a little bit of bravery, that second of bravery, just like those girls. And so I'm sure we'll have that all linked down below because Mandy is the wizard at all of that.
Yes, of course I will link all of this information. Please visit the show notes. I'll also put it in the podcast information. Because just anything, I think, is just one more person. I mean, I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so that last Star Wars where she said they win by making you think you're alone and you're not alone. But I do agree with you, Adelaide. I do agree that when you feel alone, you behave differently than if you feel you have anyone on your side. And this is not something that is fought single-handedly. And it's an honor. It's an honor for me to partner with you on this, honestly. And let's not let the darkness win. I am so sick of the darkness winning. And it gets my goat that women and children are treated like property so much that people will put their name on another human's body created in the image and likeness of God, male and female, and the hubris and the just, the scriptures say that people become past feeling. And these are the people who are in these situations, unfeeling people. And I mean, I'm kind of like, Jesus, come, like, let's open up this can. But in the meantime, we have to open up the can. We have to be part of the solution. Tyler, what kind of last comments do you have?
Yeah, well, I'm a big Star Wars nerd too. I didn't. That would have been nice to know. I could use some more Star Wars references. And actually, the reference that you made to Rise of Skywalker, there's another scene in that I love too, where they're in the fight against the Final Order and just getting whooped. And then Lando and his people show up, and they're like, "What is that?" We fly up, and then the tide turns to the fight, and the First Order, like the generals, are like, "Who are these people?" And the guys are like, "They're just people. Like they're just people that came to fight." And that's what ended up like turning the tide of that battle. It just I'm 100% like in agreement with what you said, where we're so much stronger than we are together, and how impactful these donations can be. Like Lady gave a great example of like the monthly donations of how beneficial that is. And like a sponsorship of like $275 for school supplies, like I can tell you like what that means to a specific kid. There's this new survivor in our program, fairly new. She's been with us for about 5 months. She's the sweetest little thing. She's 16 years old, and her mom has a special needs. And so she's been in survival mode for a really long time, like her and a little family. She's very small, maybe 75 pounds, like soaking wet. And this American guy, he tricked her into his Airbnb. He said, look, I need someone to clean my Airbnb. Here's a job for you. You come in and I'll pay you $50 and it'll be your new job. And so she goes and she's so small. And this American guy is a former military officer. He had since let himself go in a lot of ways, but he's still a grown man and she's a little girl. And he was like, well, I really can't pay you until you do stuff with me sexually. I'm not going to let you leave here and I won't pay you until you perform sexually. And so her with a dad who's absent, with a mom who has Down syndrome, like this girl felt obligated to do this. And he was violent with her. He was violent. She texted him and let him know that she didn't appreciate what he did. And the arrogance of him being like, well, he told her, we have it in text message. He was like, he told her, like, I'm a man, I'm an American man. You look around you, everything you see that's built around you was built by men. You need to respect me. After he just raped her. And so that guy's now in jail. Thank goodness. Like, we raided his penthouse a couple months ago and he's now in jail. But the little girl, she when we first met her, she wasn't accustomed to kindness. And so when we first met her, we took her out for ice cream. We spoiled the crap out of her. We went and got her some makeup. We bought her some new clothes and just were very gentle and kind to her. And she sends us this note that I still have. And she just, it's a 30-second note and she's crying where she's like, no one's ever been that nice to me before. No one's ever been that kind to me before. And she's getting emotional about it. And she just wasn't accustomed to people treating her well. And so when she starts school, her first day of school, she went back to school and we helped cover the cost, but she felt too shy to tell us that she needed school supplies and a uniform. And so she got made fun of in school. And so she talked to us and she told us, was like, I like, people know that I'm poor because I'm already like 2 grades behind, but I have no school supplies and I have to go in a t-shirt and jeans versus a uniform. And so what like $275 does is buys that uniform, buys those school supplies, but it makes this girl be a normal kid again.
Yeah.
It lets her go to school and get a boyfriend or fight with her friends or do a funny TikTok. Like, I don't know what she's going to do. Whatever kids nowadays, like 14, 15 years old, do. It allows her to get back that sense of normalcy and just be a normal kid. And for her, that is the next step in her healing when it comes to, I went through my process. I'm now addiction free. The trafficker's in jail. I'm in school. I want to be seen as a normal kid, and versus standing out, I just want to blend in.
Yeah.
And so that's the impact that something like school supplies and a $250 donation can make for this specific little girl.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, that's really just such a life-changing thing. And the things we take so for granted, right? Just being a normal teenager or a normal kid, and just something so extraordinary for some lives who are extraordinarily brave. So thank you both so much for being here. Before I ask you my final question, do you have any last comments or anything that you feel inspired to say or add to our conversation?
Addie, you want to go first?
Yeah, I keep thinking about like this is your classic cheesy Jesus story, but when he left the 99 to find the one, and I'm a big goal person. I like to hit goals and I don't necessarily love to come short in goals. And so sometimes when I get in my mind, like just even thinking about like 87 people, like, okay, that's great. But that is 87 individuals. Like, I cannot even handle it. And Jesus Christ, he left the one to go find the 99. And then I'm sure that when he came back, I bet there was another sheep that wandered away when he was gone. And he totally noticed and he just patiently went and got him. And he would do that process over and over and over. Like, he would never like, and if the soles were to be worn out, I'm sure he would just chuck them, grab a new pair, and then go again. Keep finding that sheep. And he's not whipping them back into the herd. He will just always go and he will always find them one by one. And so I know that we too have that ability and we have that opportunity to be able to find them one by one in whatever capacity we serve in. So I wanted to share that.
I love that story too. Like that's such a good segue to like I actually totally forgot about this story until like Addie brought up that scripture. We had this case once where there were these women that were it was more of like the more traditional cases not involving Americans versus in this case it was a Guatemalan trafficker who had some girls locked up in a brothel and wouldn't let them leave. Um, and when we first went to this brothel with this police station with this police force, we were able to recover 9 survivors. We were on the way to the police station. We were leaving and we were done because it got a little tense. And then one of the survivors spoke up and said, "Actually, there's actually one more there. She went out to with a client and she just came back. Can we go back?" And so we went back and we got this girl out, and it was tense because like the girl we went and got out was 13 years old. She was the youngest one, and it was got a little hairy because it was definitely an intense situation. But when we got her out, she went through her process, and she was talking about later because she's also studying social work. She also wants to work for Libertas one day, and she was talking about because she's very Christian. She found a lot of healing in the Christian church, and she talked about the story of the 99. She was like, a lot of people when they talk about going and finding the 99, they put themselves in like the situation of Jesus in that moment. She was like, I was the one. I was the one that not necessarily wandered off, but I was the one that was still trapped. And so the fact that someone came back for me, being the one that was still lost and held against my will, she's like, that story means so much to me because she's like, with that story, I don't resonate with Jesus going to find the 99. I resonate with being the one that was lost and the one that was trapped. And so the fact that someone came back for me is, for her, that's her favorite biblical story that Addie brought up because she was the one that was lost and someone went back for her too.
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, Adelaide and Tyler, I'm going to send you a book. There's a pastor who wrote A Shepherd Speaks on Psalm 23, The Lord is My Shepherd. It is pages and pages. I maybe send it to you as a missionary. Pages and pages of what it actually takes to be an extraordinary shepherd. There's just so many things that the Lord does. And I think of that one, right? Lost. And I think for many of us, we just take it for granted that we have a community, that we have a group, that we're part of a herd, that we feel like we have people who support us and love us. And a shepherd has a rod and a staff. So the rod is to beat off predators, which is what you do. Tyler's our rod. And our staff also, the staff, if there's a timid sheep, the shepherd just puts his staff on like the sheep's side, just kind of like, I'm here. I'm here. And I think that's a beautiful thing too, that we can be here for each other in extraordinary ways, even just saying like, I'm here, I'll sit with you, I'll go back for you, I'll be with you, I'll believe you, um, I'll stand behind you, I'll send my support in whatever way I'm able to send it. And just the power of community, of being in that body of Christ. Body of Christ is such a beautiful, diverse thing. It's amazing. All right. Well, my final the podcast is called Reflecting Light. It took me 3 years to find the name for this podcast because I'm not the light. And as much as I love the light, we are only trying to reflect that pure, beautiful light of Jesus Christ. So my final question I always ask is, what does it mean to you to reflect light?
I'll start us off. There is a hymn, and it's called Lord, I Would Follow Thee. And this is my entire life motto. And it talks about how, like, basically, it's my plea to the Lord to become like him. I'm like, please teach me the healer's art. Let me be your brother's keeper. Like, let me learn to love thee. And so, in my life, reflecting light, every single thing I do is for Jesus Christ. In every interaction, I strive to see him and how he would react. And so when that comes to people I'm not super fond of, I always imagine him like washing his disciples' feet. And it's just, how can I wash their feet? What can I do in this situation that Christ would do? And so every single day, it is my plead. And heaven knows I plead a lot more on certain days than others. But I just plead that someday I will learn the healer's art and I can become my brother's keeper because I know that I can because he set the example. And so I know that that is my potential.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
I,
Yeah, if we all were a few brothers keeper, we would imagine what our world would be like, right? Tyler,
And
take
it
the
is not easy.
as
definitely
long as we get the sheep we like. Anyway.
reflecting like for me, I think it's interesting, like reflecting like back on like my journey, my story is I definitely haven't always been probably the kindest person to God. When things go bad, I tend to blame him. When things happen to people I care about, I get upset of why this happens or why did it have to happen to them? Why couldn't it happen to somebody else? Which I know is not a great perspective to have, but I care about these kids and I get pissed when things happen to them. But I think in 2018, I was in a very dark place. I wasn't questioning the existence of God, but I was questioning his love for humanity. I was just tired and seen some things that I couldn't forget, and I just very apathetic toward everything and angry at God in a sense. It was around the time of my 28th birthday, and Grandma Lois, she'd always sneak me a 50 for my birthday, like growing up and throughout my childhood. And with that, like when in college, I'd go out to dinner, take my buddy out to dinner, help pay the rent, go buy a video game, like depending on what state of life that you're in. And she gave me this $50 a little early because we celebrated Thanksgiving early this year because I had to leave. My family has always been very accommodating toward some of that stuff. And so I was in Peru, and I had this $50 in my pocket, and I was just very in a very dark place. And I go to this aftercare home where I'd been to a lot of times. They did a surprise birthday for me. It was a great experience, and I knew all the girls by name. There was just one who was brand new. I had never seen her before. I didn't know her name, and I knew she was brand new because she was shy and I didn't recognize her face. But I recognized that she had to have been new because she had some bruises on her still. She's around 10 years old, a very sweet kid. And we had this meeting that I had to pay attention for, but the girls were so riled up because of the surprise birthday party. I was like, I need to do something to distract these kids for half hour. And so I called Pizza Hut in Lima, Peru, and they delivered. I was like, just bring me $50 worth of pizza. I don't care what flavors. Just have whatever you have ready to send, and have it equal $50. And so the guy comes like 10 minutes later. He brings all these pizzas. I give him $50. It distracts the girls for half an hour. I have my meeting, and then I'm able to interact with them as they deserve. It was a great day. Probably one of the best birthdays I've ever had. And my flight left the next day back to Salt Lake City. I had some horrific flight that went from Lima, Peru to Toronto to Salt Lake City. It was a miserable, miserable flight. But it got delayed 14 hours. And so I texted the aftercare home. It was a Catholic home. And I said, hey, this my flight got canceled. You guys doing church? Can I come with you? If not, no worries. I'll find something to do. I'll go to the gym or something. And the nun who was in charge of this home was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to church. We're going to mass. Come on over. You can come with us." And I was like, "Awesome, cool, great, let's go." So we went with. I went to mass with them, and I happened to sit next to the little girl, the new girl, the Venezuelan girl who's 10 years old, and I when we were listening to the hymns and all that stuff, I decided hit her up in conversation and get to know her a little bit. And I said, "Hey, I'm Tyler, and how are you doing? How are you feeling?" She told me about her bruises on her arm. She had been rescued 2 nights before, so the day before I got to the aftercare home, she was pulled off the streets. A Peruvian pimp tricked her family into sending her from Venezuela to Peru, and then in hours of traffic, the trafficker had forced her to beg, and then would force her to do sexual things inside cars that were stuck in traffic. And so, I'm sitting next to her in this church, and I always ask the kids, do you like the home? And the answer is always no, always, because these survivors, a lot of times they're so accustomed to the world of abuse that it becomes their normal. And nobody likes being taken out of their comfort zone. Nobody, even if your comfort zone is complete hell. And so I was asked this kid, I was like, well, do you like the home? Kind of expecting, her to get like, no, I don't like the home. But she was like, oh, I love the home. I love it. And I was like, really? Like, what do you like about it? Like, tell me why. Because this is the first time I ever asked somebody freshly rescued if they like an institutionalized home, and you're the first one that said yes. And she was like, well, I know they care about me. And I was like, well, tell me why. Like, why do they think they care about you? She was like, well, my favorite food is pizza. And they brought me pizza on my first day here. And so anyone that would do that has to really care about my well-being, has to really care about like if I'm okay as a person. And it was something very special for her. And it was like it's like this message from God I'll never forget, because it was just $50 that grandma gave me. I just happened to have it in my wallet, and I just needed the kids to shut up for 30 minutes. That's all I needed. And so I just ordered pizza because it was the easiest way to like get them to just be quiet. And for this girl, it was an act of kindness that like her favorite food would be given to her to help her feel welcome in this new place and this new walk of freedom. And it was like I couldn't, like, on the flight home, it was a red-eye flight, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't get any sleep because I felt so guilty for being so upset with God, because it was like God was showing me of like, no matter how much you love these kids, I love them more, because there's no way you could have done this without my help. And so, like, don't ever think that you love them more than I do, because I've sacrificed more for them than you ever have and you ever will. And for me, that was such like a lightning bolt moment where I was like, oh, I can't believe that I ever had like those thoughts and feelings of just anger toward him. And I still do. I think that's normal, like to have those conversations, but I always go back on that story. And for me, like, reflecting light is, he told me in what I was feeling, like, I don't know if it was revelation or if it was just a thought or whatever it was, but he told me, he was like, I love them more than you ever will, but you show me you love me by loving them. And so for me, like, how I reflect light is I try to be with these survivors a safe male, someone that they can count on, that won't exploit them, and someone that will give them support for free without any strings attached. With, you don't have to thank me, you have to give me a hug, you don't have to send me a thank you. You don't have to do anything. And I think that's the closest reflection that of what I can think of what grace was given to us, where like God sacrificed his only son so that we could gain access to heaven. And there's nothing that we could do to ever repay him. Nothing. And it's a free gift of salvation. It's the gift of grace, like whatever you want to call it. It's the atonement. And it's without condition. Like, yeah, like you have, like, there's like the process of like the gospel of like baptism and repentance and receiving the Holy Ghost, but it's something that God did for us, and we're not expected to do much in return other than accept his son and be saved. And for me, like, reflecting light is to give that, even, 0.5% to the survivors that call Libertas home. Of, this is a free gift. You don't have to thank us. I just want you to be happy. I want you to be healed, and I want you with us. And so for that reason, I'm giving you this gift.
Wow. You told me some tough stories today, but that one. So, one of our listeners gave me $100 a couple of years ago, and I've kept it in my phone all these years because I was waiting for the perfect person to be the recipient of this money. So, I'm sending that your way, and I will also be signing up and sponsoring. But that's who that was always meant for, and it's like 2 or 3 years old, and it's just never felt right till this moment for pizza or whatever it's going to be. But first of all, Tyler, you are an atlas. You are a human atlas. So please don't ever feel badly for how your line of work that I would say less than 1% of 1% could do. We are lucky you are on that front line. You are, the Hebrew word is a gibor, a mighty warrior of God. And you hold that front line for all of us. So thank you. And you're not immortal. So you're going to feel awful and you're going to have dark days. And I hope we support you. I hope you know that we support you. But what a beautiful reminder that our heavenly parents, our Savior, knows people intimately, as far as pizza or nail color or whatever it's going to be. So thank you both so much for being here and for sharing your lives and your passion for the children of our heavenly parents. And I am not the same. I'm not the same person I was an hour ago. So thank you for reflecting your light into my life and sharing that with me. For those who want to, of course, I will. Is there a website you have just right off that you could just say right off the bat? They don't have to even log in.
Yeah, you can. There's two ways to donate, whichever it's easier for people. There's libertasinternational.org, or there's the Venmo, which is at Libertas Freedom. Whichever way people prefer to donate, that's usually the easiest way.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Adelaide will be heading out to Colombia in May. So if any of you want to donate in kind that way as well, we will make sure it gets to those kids. And to you, Tyler, Frick, go buy yourself, like, I don't know, I would say a beer. I don't know if you drink, but something, man. That's a rough life. Again, you're not alone out there either. Thank you for holding that line for us. And Adelaide, thank you for using going into uncomfortable space and entering a beauty pageant and finding a way to reflect light in unique and beautiful ways too. Just thank you both so much.
Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you. All right, that's the podcast for today. Wishing you all love and light. And let's be part of spreading that this week.
Thank you for joining us for Reflecting Light with Mandy Green. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a good rating and share it with your friends. And remember, your light makes the world a brighter place. Share it.